Now, there's a live stream happening, so they're waiting for us. First of all, thank you all so much for coming. That's a problem. The train is always a problem. Thank you for sharing this really nice day with us. You could be out on the beach, but you're here, so that's amazing. For those listening at home, I don't know who's listening at home, but thank you so much. And it's amazing to bring these two lovely communities together, UX Edinburgh and People Planet Pint. Who's been to a People Planet Pint before? Amazing, there's a few. UX, a lot. There's a lot of you. So hopefully we'll be able to recruit more people coming into People Planet Pint next time. But yeah, first of all, thank you to Bellfield Brewery. They're an amazing venue. We choose this venue actually because they're, well, obviously a local brewery, but also they do loads in terms of sustainability. I wanted someone to come and talk to you about it, but they're really busy today. But basically, if you see, they normally only do cans because obviously when it comes to transport, emissions, etc., cans are better. They also have a digester in here, and basically they brew here. They've got a 2,000 liter brewer here, so it's amazing. So support your local brewery. And also thank you, first of all, to Mike Jefferson, who leads UX Edinburgh, and Michael for making this happen, for making this collaboration. Alan, thank you so much for the tech. I know it's been a bit of a nightmare and it was a challenging venue, but thank you so much. And our lovely speakers who we'll introduce in a second. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Constanza. I'm the co-host of People Planet Pint. And here, come here. Here's Tom, my lovely co-host. And we also have, we're very lucky to have Adam Bastock with us today. And part of his team, Adam is the founder of People Planet Pint. So basically, People Planet Pint is now a global movement. It runs all across the UK and internationally. So now there's meetups in Sydney, Hawaii, the US. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Val, where are you? Val's here. Adam's lovely team, and Michael too. And this brings me to my final thank you with like deepest gratitude to first Mole99, which is Adam's company. So basically, they sponsor this event. Our sponsors are Mole99. Adam not only leads this movement, but he also leads his company, Mole99, and he'll talk about it afterwards, but he's got some amazing tools. You should definitely check it out. There's some free tools, so please go to the webpage. You've got QR codes there, so give it a visit. And then we also have Crystal. We're really lucky, so whoever got a free pint, that's thanks to Crystal. Crystal is 100% green host. They're a B Corp. They are the only web hosting who are a B Corp, and they also have the target to plant 1 billion trees by 2030, which is amazing. And even if you're not in the lookout, even if you're not on the lookout for green web hosting, their company is amazing. So it's definitely a company to follow. I'm really badly organized, so I've got notes here, and on my phone. Now, on my phone, this year, People Planet Pint, for those this is the first People Planet Pint you've been, turns 3 years. It all started, he'll probably talk about it, and he asked me to not ruin his numbers. But it all started 3 years ago at COP26 when Adam put a call to say, like, you know, I'm frustrated with COP26. Does anyone want to come and have a pint with me? And then it basically turned into this amazing global movement. I won't ruin your numbers. And for those who haven't been before, it's just a very relaxed monthly meetup. So we meet every month. The next one will be on the 20th of June. This June is very busy, but we're going to be doing one with business declares. So it'll be on the 20th of June at 6 p.m. in Cask and Smugglers. And it's a very relaxed monthly meetup to find out what's happening locally in the sustainability space and find out how you can get involved. So this is all about sharing experiences, sharing your knowledge, and knowing what's happening around the city. There's no need to be an expert. So those UX, I'm so glad you're here. So we can start talking about sustainability and bridging these communities. We need people connected, becoming part of our community, working towards the benefit of people on the planet. And we know that are connected, and as a community, we are stronger. So I do encourage you to network today, meet loads of interesting people. There's a wealth of knowledge here today. So get to know what's happening locally and agree to take action. A simple takeaway from today can be to encourage more people to join our People Planet Pint network and to join this movement. And finally, I'll swear I'll shut up after this. Why UX and People Planet Pint? Why this collaboration? You know that UX plays a big role in creating user-friendly designs that can help promote environmental and social responsibility. So this is in very simple words, and our speakers will talk more about it. We'll have four speakers. We'll have four speakers, and he'll deep dive into all of this. But you've heard it before, every job is a climate job, and you can all make changes and a difference in the industries you work in. So UX plays a big part in this. And I'm sure you all have great skills, talent, and a wealth of knowledge. So why not use it for the better and positively impact our communities and the planet? So I'll leave it here. I'll pass on the microphone to Mike, who will be introducing the next speaker, and we'll talk a little bit about UX Edinburgh.
Thank you very much, Constanza. Can you all hear me at the back? Yeah, just before I forget, if anyone wants to come closer, please come closer. We're not mic'd up, I don't think, today. So, yeah, do that. But I'll try and raise my voice. So, yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to this, our People Planet Pint UX Edinburgh collaboration event. And thanks for echoing what Constanza said there. Thanks very much for choosing to be with us here today. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up for you. We've got a range of different talks that all kind of lie at the intersection of sustainability and design. And whilst these talks are varied, I think one of the things that they do have in common is that they've got people, trains, and community at the heart. Which is a kind of a cornerstone of user experience, of UX Edinburgh, and of course of People Planet Pint. So I was going to do a list of thanks, but thankfully Constanza has taken that on. So thanks to all the same people that Constanza thanked, and an additional person who I'm ashamed to say that I often forget this person, and I'm not going to do it today. You'll see Val over there with the camera. She'll be floating around, taking some pictures, trying to capture the spirit, or not trying to, capturing the spirit of the occasion. Thank you very much, Val. Big thanks to Alan over there, once again live streaming our events. We really appreciate him being here. Thanks very much, Alan, and thanks to as I say, everyone that Constanza thanked. Thanks to People Planet Pint. Thanks to this great venue. First time I've been here. Wow, what a venue, especially on a day like today. Okay, a reminder. So you'll see in front of you, you've got some beer mats, and those beer mats have got space to write on. And hopefully you'll have a pen for each table. If you don't have a pen, let us know. And I think I've got a couple of spare ones. As you listen to the speakers today, if there's any questions that come to your mind, just jot them down. on those beer mats. We won't be doing Q&As immediately after each talk, but we will have a Q&A at the end of the event with our four speakers here. We'll have a bit of a panel discussion based on some of your Q&As. So we'll be collecting those up at the end of the four talks. Right, okay, that's enough for me. I'm going to hand you over. No, I'm going to introduce our first speaker today, Brendan. Now, I've been trying to get Brendan to talk for UX Edinburgh for quite some time now. Quite some time. But, and thankfully, he's finally cracked. So Brendan is a sustainability consultant. He's an academic. He's got a background in broadcast journalism. And today he's going to be talking to us about how we might use so-called dark patterns. If you don't know what they are, don't worry. Brendan will explain all. How do we use dark patterns, or might we use dark patterns for good rather than for ill? So I'm going to hand you straight over to Brendan. Let's give it up for Brendan.
Thank in advance my glamorous assistant Tom, who's going to change the slides because we had slight technical difficulties. So I've also got a bit of a background in psychology, which is very applicable to sustainability, and I'm a regular attender of both of these groups, interestingly enough. So I'm very glad this has happened in the end as a result of your action. If there's anything I say that you need clarification, feel free to interrupt while I'm talking, but substantive questions we'll deal with later. Okay, I can talk louder, that's easy. Just keep reminding me. Okay, Tom. So a little bit of audience interaction. I'm going to ask you a few questions, so put your hands in the air to these questions. In your professional life, do you ever set out to manipulate people to get what you want? Half. In your personal life? Most of the same people, actually. In your professional life, do you ever suspect you are being manipulated by other people to get what they want? Okay, about 3/4. And in your personal life? Yeah, okay. So who thinks they know what dark patterns are? Don't explain, just stick your hand in the air. Okay, that's a little less than half. If you're a member of the UX group and you didn't put your hand up there, you're a very naughty boy. Because it's something that's quite central to the design of interfaces and so on. And I'll put a slide up here, Tom, which most of you won't be able to see, so I'll unfortunately have to read out these slides. So a dark pattern is a user interface or experience that makes you do something that you didn't set out to do. And there are many, many examples of this, but some, Tom, are misdirection, confirm shaming. You can probably guess what that is. You know, when you are presented with an option that makes you feel worse if you reject it. Bait and switch. That's used in sales anyway. Roach motel. Anyone know what a roach motel is? It's basically where an environment is created where you can't escape. You have the feeling of being able to move around, but the exit door is kind of hidden. And privacy zuckering, which is basically stealing your information and making it very hard for you to stop that happening, although usually for legal reasons there is an option to do that, but it's buried many levels down. Tom? So all of these things are done for the benefit of the provider or the people who make the interface, right? And I'm sure you can recognize that that's very common with a lot of apps and commercial websites and so on, because it increases their retention of people and sales and all sorts of things like that. Okay, so what I'm talking about here, I'm not just talking about computer interfaces, though that's probably the heart of what the UX group does. I'm also, as a psychologist, talking more widely. Everything we deal with in life has interfaces and interactions, even face-to-face with other people, and even down to the most fundamental sensory level. Philosophically speaking, we're not actually living in the world as it is. We're living in a world that our senses create, and our senses perceive, filter, and present us with a reduced version of the complexity of reality. So some psychologists call this a user illusion. We have a virtual reality picture of the world that our brain constructs, but it isn't the world. It's an intermediate thing. So the idea that interfaces or that interfaces can interfere in how we act and what we choose to do is not remotely new. Next one, Tom. So what I would pose the question of is, isn't this just skillful design? Aren't dark patterns an instance of designers just being clever? Would anyone not agree with that? Would anyone say there's something not good about being manipulated? Yeah? What do you think?
Well, you know, like, just so we're like, I don't know, evil villains, they're incredibly clever. I think just looking at the good someone does and like the good someone doesn't at any point rule out the bad.
Yeah.
That kind of comes along with that.
So what I find annoying is when there are two levels that I think can be particularly annoying. Have you got a problem, Alan? No. Two levels. You can be annoyed at the outcome. So when you buy something from Amazon, you find out you've accidentally been signed up to Amazon Prime, and that's one of the worst offenders. Tiny little bits of money each month, out of which they make billions. That's an outcome bias. But some people also are very annoyed about the idea of being deceived in the moment. You're doing something to me that I don't know about, and that's offensive. Because if you did know, you might not do the thing that they're asking you to do. So there's a conflict of interest there. Next, Tom. So this is all based, I think, in the idea, our being offended and so on, is all based in the idea that most of us operate with what I believe is a flawed psychological model, that we overestimate the importance of conscious awareness. We are not, as many like to believe, hyper-vigilant geniuses that detect everything, analyse thoroughly, and then decide accurately what to do. We're actually lazy, error-prone machines that automate most things. If you think of heartbeat is the easiest one, but that's not to do with consciousness so much. But a lot of the decision-making in life, walking, you know, we're not thinking about that at a conscious level. It's just happening. Our body's doing it. Our body knows. So I think it's rather like an iceberg, that conscious awareness is just a little bit at the top, and the vast majority of mental processes are what's below the water. We have lots of inbuilt shortcuts for doing that. And in fact, that is quite probably the most magnificent thing about being a human being, that we've got evolved the ability to jump incredibly quickly to approximate conclusions when you first meet someone, for example, which are probably, but not infallibly, correct. Next, Tom. So if most mental processing happens unconsciously, outside our awareness, and by the way, there's research to back up the fact that we make most of our decisions intuitively, and by intuitively I don't mean I'm thinking about what I feel. I mean, literally, the decisions are made, all sorts of evidence for all sorts of actions, and then our brain goes back and finds justifications for what we've chosen. And that's measured in, you know, the milliseconds of brain impulses. They can measure particular kinds of decisions, and the decision is settled milliseconds before consciousness is awoken to think about that decision. So that's quite a profound finding. So if our perceptions and motivations have all these flaws and glitches, does that mean we're just wide open to be manipulated, whatever we do? Next, Tom. So do we have any choice in this matter? And I would say, by the very nature of consciousness, every one of us is manipulating and being manipulated, depending on how you frame that thought, all the time, irrespective of whether what I would call the victim of that manipulation or the perpetrator is aware of it. If you think of when people say they want something, that doesn't necessarily come from a conscious decision. It comes from a gut decision. You might know there's what's the book? I'll remember. There's a famous paperback book which talks all about this, which you may know and I've recently read. So I've got a few examples here, Tom, next, of the difference between the user being aware and not aware of what's being done to them and how that affects them. So if you think of an example where the user is completely obviously aware of what's happening and they know it's exploitative, buy one, get one free online or in a supermarket, something. You know what they're doing to you. That's an incredible bargain, but it's highly manipulative and it results in overconsumption, well documented. So there are actually attempts to ban that sort of promotion over certain things like alcohol. Next, Tom. So what if we have an exploitative meme or way of doing this, which is hidden from the user? So I've quoted disconfirmation sophistry. That's when the question is asked back to front and you mistakenly tick a box that you think that you're ticking don't send me spam, and you're actually ticking the box to send you spam because of the way they word it. Or cross-site tracking between websites, which I would argue that those things are bordering on a bit creepy. Next, Tom. So what about the other case where you're being manipulated but for benign reasons, relatively harmless reasons? So there's the sign up to our newsletter one. I'm increasingly irritated by almost every website I go to now presents this big sign right in front of me saying sign up. Before I've done anything, before I've expressed an interest in what they're doing or found out anything, they're asking me to sign up to the website. I find that bloody irritating. I wish they'd be a bit more clever and subtle about it. Next, Tom. And what about a benign concealed one? So dwell time tracking, if anyone knows what that is. All the time you're using a website, you're being measured in intense detail about what you're doing, where your mouse is on the screen, how long you're on that page. But when it's used in a good way, that's, well, so what? They're optimizing their website. They're trying to make it easier to understand, more intuitive. So perhaps that's not problematic. So next, Tom. So that instance is the one that I want to drill down into a little bit around sustainability. So, not all manipulations necessarily result in annoying, bad, sinister outcomes. Okay, Tom? So you could argue that understanding how to do these things is a superpower of a kind. And in that context, I wonder what it means that we obsess about getting user permission for everything. That's obvious. That's a legal requirement in some jurisdictions and so on. The idea, or even in real life, the idea that you have to give me permission to do what I want to do in respect of you. And I wonder if the end is good, is there any point to that really? But there are some problems with that. It's happening anyway. We're being manipulated anyway, whether we give permission or not. Think about the mass media, for example, and the what I would say is the very strong bias to right-wing memes and right-wing angles on stories in the newspapers. If you're still one of those people who read that ancient form of communication. And on the fringes of awareness that we're talking about, who actually gets to decide what is an acceptable manipulation? It's an interesting question to ponder. Next one, Tom. And the next one, probably. Yeah. So basically, I'm going to leap very sideways into engineering here. There's a way of controlling behaviour in risky and dangerous situations that engineers use, and it's called the hierarchy of safety controls. This might sound a bit bizarre and left field, but it does tie in. And next one, Tom, you can probably, yeah. Okay, so it's got 5 levels. I'm having to explain this. It's much better if you just can read the diagram. But it's got 5 levels of control, the most stringent of which is eliminate. So if, for instance, you have a dangerous machine in a factory, if you can find a way to not have that machine, you've eliminated the danger in one fell swoop. You've completely controlled the problem. Next one down, substitute. You might substitute, put in place a less dangerous machine. Next one down, redesign. You might do something to the machine which makes it less dangerous. Next one, regulate. Put in place rules. You know, you must wear safety goggles or whatever. Next one, educate. Please don't do this, right? And they are in descending order of strength. So educate and inform, which is always the politicians' get out when they want social change, is the weakest form of behavioural intervention. It is actually, I think, in most cases, either ignorance of politicians or perhaps more sinisterly, a way of saying they're doing something without actually doing anything. It's often pouring money down the toilet. We see again and again and again education and information campaigns for social and behavioural change, which go nowhere. If you look at the results when they're measured years later, very little happens. So I happen to be rather obsessed at the moment with changing transport. And as you well know, in Edinburgh, there's an attempt, or there is a plan, a commitment to control and eliminate cars in the old town, which has been proven to be beneficial in dozens and dozens of cities. You reinvigorate streets, people come back, trade actually goes up for the shopkeepers, nobody gets killed. You know, it's better all round. The only people who suffer are the people who want to drive up those streets, who are actually a minority at all times of day and in society. The people who come into the centre of the city, which this city has good public transport, as you know, the drivers are a small minority. So when you hear them, and they're also a loud small minority who complain and complain and complain. So let's go the other way up that engineering safety. Yeah, I've only got 3 slides left. The engineering safety intervention. So the least powerful behavioural intervention, I would say, is something like signs. Don't come in here. Traffic lights. The proportion of drivers who break the law at traffic lights is quite shocking. It's something like 2/3. And then motorists have the audacity to complain about cyclists, and the number of cyclists is about less than 10%. Next one up, rules. You can't come in here, you'll get a fine. You know, it's illegal, points on your license. Next one up, traffic calming, making streets wavy, narrower, sleeping policemen and so on. You're beginning to get into the realm of physical interventions. Next one up, separated bike lanes. If you want to have cars, give cars access, but also save cyclists from getting murdered. That is actually the most common reason people don't cycle, is fear of cars. So separated bike lanes with a physical, not just paint, but a physical barrier of some kind, whether that's those... Whether it's those plastic ones that a friend of mine called street dildos, or a proper concrete thing. And then at the top level, I would say the strongest form of behavioural intervention is bollards. Because a bollard ends the argument. There is no further discussion. You cannot come in here. So while I'm talking about this, be thinking about sustainability interventions, what we have done as a society and what it is possible to do. Next one. Okay, so knowing that these dark patterns, ways of manipulating people exist, we can respond in various ways. We can deny that these things are very powerful at all, which I think is putting yourself in a position of being a victim to them. We can ignore them, and I think that is naive. We can understand them, which gives you some degree of defense against it. You can, find those down menu options and defend yourself. Pain in the neck, but, at least you've got some fight back. Next one, we can learn them and use them, and that puts us in a position of power. If you want to change behavior, learn about this kind of stuff because it will be useful to you. And then last one, share them with others. Now you might say that's enlightened. It's a good thing to do, but I wonder, is it potentially cruel? That's an odd thing to say, but actually most people can't get their head around this and never will. And if you tell them they're being manipulated, maybe you're just setting up people to be disappointed, annoyed, rebellious, with no way of fighting back. So, you as UX and sustainability professionals, I would hope would want to understand and use these behavioral interventions. And you're not talking, academic level psychology here. There are lots of presentations on how to do this in common language. There's a well-known book, for instance, called Don't Make Me Think. Don't Make Me Think. And it's cartoons, basically. But it's about how to get people to do things without what you're trying to do having to penetrate their conscious awareness, subconscious behavioral change. Okay, next one. So having said all that, I would ask you to ponder the question, is manipulation for good acceptable? We have the power to do certain things to people without their knowledge. And sustainability is primarily a problem of changing human behavior. We know what needs to happen. We know the outcomes we want. So I would ask you, shouldn't we, as advocates of sustainability, be doing everything we can to use these powers? We must get a speaker system next time. So to conclude, just a quote from a book about dark patterns. Dark patterns are successful precisely because they are founded on good interaction design principles. The best way to learn from them is to start with a dark pattern and remove its darkness. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. That went fast.
If you want to go and grab a quick pint right now, amazing. And thank you, Brendan. That was really interesting. Another thing that I forgot to mention is there's some amazing pizza today. Outer Space Pizza, which is an amazing social enterprise from Edinburgh, from Broomhouse, are serving pizza today. It's all gluten-free, and they're using Uni pizza dough, which some of you might know that I used to work for Uni. So it's really like good quality pizza if you want to check them out. Our next speaker. questions. Does anyone have questions? Write down questions. Sorry.
Write down the question.
So questions, please write them down. And then in the end, we'll have a panel and you'll be able to, like, we'll be able to pose the questions. Sorry. Anyway, next up is Kelsey Murphy. Kelsey studied music, teaching at university before deciding to switch careers and become a software engineer with a focus on user experience and sustainability. Kelsey will talk about tracking website carbon emissions, developing websites and web applications with sustainability in mind, and the impact of user experience when it comes to reducing emissions. So big applause for Kelsey. Okay.
Hello. Let me just quickly make sure I'm all good. Okay. Can you see me / hear me okay? Up at the back, maybe a little bit? Cool. Adam, if you can't hear me, just do an ear thing and that's perfect. Okay. Sorry. I'll wait till everyone's a wee bit settled. Okie dokes. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Murphy, as Constanza said, and I'm a software engineer, not primarily a UX designer. I actually studied music at university. The goal was to become a music teacher and go into that career. But probably around about the time of COP26 as well, I realized that teaching wasn't really for me. There was something else that I wanted to do. I loved solving problems. I loved experimenting with things, designing things myself, even if it was just for fun, Lego, all these different things, loved it, right? And the area that I started to look into was UX design. I started to do the UX Google certification, which was really interesting. I downloaded Figma. I started to teach myself Figma and Sketch and use these different tools just to build out random websites that I'd seen. I'd been looking at Dribbble and Behance and seeing all the cool flashy designs and trying to replicate them myself and make them for myself. As a small side note, during the same time, I was running a business as a magician, as a wedding magician. I would do card tricks at weddings. I would do coin magic, Rubik's Cube tricks, the lot. It was quite good. It was a fun, not side hustle, I don't want to call it that, but it was a good thing to do on the side of university compared to working in Morrison's, which I actually did for a while as well. So there you go. So doing this magician business, I needed a website at the time. I had taught myself the basics of HTML and CSS and barely knew what I was doing in terms of design. I would not want you to look back and see the websites that I had at the time, trust me. But I really found that I could use some of those no-code, low-code tools out there. So some of you might have heard of Webflow, and some of you might have heard of other tools like Squarespace. There was an interesting one I found called Bubble, which is more for more closer to web applications. It has logins and all these different things. So as I was moving out of that career as a music teacher, I figured out that software / design might be the area I wanted to go into, and I doubled down on learning that no-code development. I landed a role at an Australian agency. I was still based in the UK. Pandemic was a weird time. And I was building out websites for them. And that was actually kind of straddling the fence. I was sometimes asked to design landing pages and dashboards and various different little UI things for the design team. But then I was also asked to build them out using Webflow and this Bubble tool. So I kind of had a really interesting perspective on both, where I could work with the developers and I could work with the UI designers. And yeah, that kind of led me to where I am now, where I felt a little bit limited by these tools. I wanted to do some more flashy animations, and the no-code tools I was using weren't quite cutting it for me. So I decided to just go in on learning the code, teaching myself that. I did Code Clan, if anyone's heard of that. Sadly doesn't exist anymore, rest in peace. But I went through that and taught myself how to code. Did a sort of graduate scheme at a company called BJSS. It's a consultancy that's basically global now, but they work with a lot of clients like Specsavers and various different companies. And yeah, that got me to the point where I am now, where I'm basically a consultant for them, building out websites using code, but still really enjoying that UX experience that I'd learned as I went along, and still occasionally doing magic in the pub. Now, so far I haven't talked about sustainability at all, but this is where it kind of leads into that, because around about doing that Code Clan course, I started attending various meetups. I hadn't actually heard of People Planet Pint at this point, but I'd done a couple of other meetups that had mentioned sustainability, and COP26 was happening around about that time as well. It was fresh in everyone's mind. And one of my goals when I was building my personal projects for myself, because as some of you might know, especially as UX designers, if you are trying to land a role, you're probably going to need a couple of projects under your belt. For me, that was kind of a mixture between the two, some front-end development projects with some hopefully nice-ish UX and user interfaces, and also actually being a website that people could use. So my main goal as I was building these was, can I build them as sustainable as possible? Just for me. This is just for me. This wasn't for the clients I was working for. It was, if I'm going to build a website, could I make it sustainable? And what would that look like? And that's kind of what I'm going to share in the next couple of minutes. So the sort of experiences I learned along that way. So the first project that I built was, whilst I was applying for jobs, I built a job application tracker. So I think I'd been using Notion at the time, basically an Excel spreadsheet, and I was tracking my jobs that way. But could I build a website that I could throw jobs into? It had a little nice API thing that could pull the logos, and it was pretty fun. I called it Planet Career. If you do want to go check that out, that still exists, planetcareer.co.uk. I don't really care if you use it or not, but it's funny to see. So I built that, and I initially just threw it and got it hosted with a random company called Vercel, and didn't really think about anything to do with sustainability when I first built it. But then I started to switch up, and I looked into green energy hosting providers. So hosting providers that I could host my website that were on green energy. I experimented with Crystal hosting, which was fantastic. I eventually found that for the specific tools that I was using, there was a fantastic tool called Netlify, Cloudflare Pages, DigitalOcean. They all also did it as well, but they were really focused for developers. So that was great. So I used those, and I could now see that my websites were running on green energy. I discovered around about this time an amazing resource called the Green Web Foundation. Some of you might have heard about this. Uh-oh, I hear it. And if you put a URL for a website into that Green Web Foundation, it will tell you if the website is running on green energy or not. So I really highly recommend this, to take a random website, throw it in and see if it's running on green energy or not. The next tool that I used that I found was called EcoGrader. And if you haven't heard of this, that's totally fair. I only discovered it relatively recently in the last 4 or 5 months. And this is quite similar. You take a web URL, ecograder.com, if anyone's writing it down, and you put your bbcnews.co.uk, for example, into that, and it will give you a readout of how much carbon is being emitted by that website based on a calculation that it does. And it will also tell you a bunch of other factors as well. It also links into accessibility, SEO, because as you can imagine, these are all quite closely related. If your accessibility is good on your website, and if your SEO is strong on your website, it's a good chance that your website performs well, is quite lean, isn't using up too much resources, and is therefore a bit more sustainable in the process of that. Perfect. As a quick aside, I did take the bbcnews.co.uk and I put it into that EcoGrader tool. And I apologize if anybody works here at BBC News, but out of the ranking of 0 to 100, bbcnews.co.uk was given a ranking of 43. 43 out of 100. And every single time the page is loaded, it was 2.09 grams of carbon was emitted every single time the BBC News page is loaded. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but the BBC News web pages are probably loaded quite a lot. I wouldn't know the numbers, but I imagine that adds up, right? So there's a lot to that. Now, let me just remember where I am. So a couple of quick things that I found as I was going through. Now that I'd built my job tracking application, I wanted to try and make sure that was performant, trying to get a good ranking in that EcoGrader tool, etc. And there was 4 areas, or 3 mainly, and 3.5, I'll say, that really hit the mark for getting that ranking improved. And some of you will be more than familiar with some of these, The first one was images, media, images and video. I found that if I had a website that I'd drawn inspiration from Dribbble and it was quite flashy, had a lot of images, that wouldn't perform very well in these tools. If I was using my images sparingly or optimizing them, converting them from JPEGs and PNGs that I had in Figma, converting them to WebP, which is a fantastic image file type. I highly recommend looking into that if you've not used that before. But those WebP images that are optimized, you could see the difference in the rankings when I was comparing them and building my website. I also don't really tend to embed videos on my website. If I need to, I'll link to YouTube or Vimeo if I absolutely need to, but I wouldn't try to embed them in the website, because when a user downloads that website onto their browser to view it, they're also using a lot of resources to download it, and therefore it's got a higher, it emits more carbon as it goes. One last one on that point was actually custom fonts. So if you look on Dribbble, you'll probably see Inter by, I think, Google, used all the time on all these different websites. A lot of those Google fonts, they're custom fonts. They're another thing that you're downloading and using all across the website. There are ways to optimize it, and they're quite well known. There's those WOFF file types and WOFF2, or WOFF. They're great. But also just using the system fonts. If you can get away with using Arial or Helvetica, etc., it's one less thing to download, the site's more performant. And I noticed another difference in my ranking as well. And the last thing I just want to touch on as I finish up is email. I found that email is naturally really carbon intensive. The stat that I have is a single email with photo attachments is about 25 to 50 grams of carbon dioxide emitted every single time that email is downloaded onto the device. Not just viewed, but like all those emails that you get in that have images attached that you don't even look at, you just delete. That's still something that's happening. So when I'm building my websites, if I'm building out an onboarding journey, or I'm doing two-factor authentication, or something like that in my journey, something that's so well known as part of the user flow nowadays, I'll try to use different methods to verify that user's identity if I can, than emails or text messages, because they can be quite intensive. And I'm still fairly new to this journey, and I love talking about it to people. People Planet Pint has been the place that I can go to and talk about all these different areas. And I highly recommend going along, because honestly, I've absolutely loved it. But these are just some of the areas I've found that have really improved my own personal websites as I've been building them. And maybe they'll come in handy for you if you already do things like accessibility reviews when you're doing your designs and your workflows. Throw in a sustainability review alongside that and think, how much is my website using? Can I use tools like EcoGrader or the Green Web Foundation to get some data on this? I just thought I'd throw it out there and see what you think. But that's been me. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good one.
I think it's me next. I'm here anyway, if not. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. Appreciate the slight challenges with noise. Yeah, Constanza, please do keep throwing arms in the air if I'm not loud enough, and I'll try and not be too bright as well. In terms of challenges, I was down in London last year doing a talk at Farnborough, and it was the fully charged show where they had private planes taking off in the background. So that train is not the biggest thing that I've competed with. Thanks to Alan again for kind of helping with the AV equipment today, and for all of these people who've been helping us speak and put on this amazing event, and mostly thank you to you guys for turning up when it's so sunny and wonderful out. I run a company called Small 99, so we do several things. Really, People Planet Pint is just part of that, and I'll go into the details of that later. Really, we help small businesses tell their sustainability stories with confidence, and making sure that they've got the data behind their stories to know that actually it's really true, and that they can go out and shout about it and inspire and impact others. The reason for that is being more sustainable helps businesses become more profitable, it helps them retain staff, it helps them meet supply chain requirements. So we do quite a lot of work with companies that might be being pressured by people like Microsoft or the NHS to actually have these carbon reduction plans in place to keep going and make more money. And that's really why I wanted to talk about sustainability today, leading off of Kelsey's amazing talk around actually what are the impacts of this, what are the business opportunities of sustainability, what is it that this actually means, and kind of why are we here talking about it. The key thing that we really focus on though is action. And without getting too kind of political about this, because I feel like I might drift into Tony Blair at any moment, so apologies for that. But there are 5.5 million small businesses in the UK at the minute. They can all take action really quickly. They're typically business owners like me, like Bellfield, who can put solar panels on the roof. They can do really imaginative, low carbon things really quickly. And Small 99, when I founded it kind of 2-3 years ago around COP26, the idea was around getting 1 million of those businesses to take their first steps on their net zero journey by 2025. Now, that sounded great 3 years ago. Now it's kind of being a little bit more pressured in the fact we've got about, 18 months left to achieve that. And I think we're sat around the 50,000 mark at the minute in terms of organisations we've engaged. And I'll come on to how we've done that shortly. But for us, really, action has always been the key. There's been a lot of talk in this space, and I think sustainability does suffer slightly from a lot of talk and not enough action, and that's why we're in the problem we're in right now. So it's how do we actually give these small businesses the abilities to take action more quickly? To take a step back and look at the bigger point of that, the reason why is that in order to stay within 1.5 degrees or stay within 2 degrees, is that we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. That sounds scary and quite big, but actually small businesses can move quickly. A 50% reduction is relatively achievable. If you look at something like solar panels, that can be an 80% reduction. LEDs, they're a 90% reduction. If you take a petrol car and move on to an e-bike, that's around a 95% reduction. So there's things that we can do now with existing technologies to rapidly decarbonise. But we need to make sure that we're always keeping it in mind of this bigger goal of kind of climate change and the impacts and risks that brings to our businesses. There are kind of 4 key ways in how we do this. One, People, Planet, Pint, and I'm going to talk more about the kind of the global movement that's become a bit later and some of the stats around that. We've also developed, leading more on the kind of user experience theme here, and thanks to kind of the collaboration here, because I think it's a really key intersection, in that we've developed Small 99 Hero, which is our online tech platform, where we were like, well, people say they want action, here's a bunch of actions that you can go and take as a small business, or if you're working in a small business. At least that one's electrified. The other one's been diesel. Train-based joke's never good. In terms of measurement as well, because obviously understanding your carbon footprint as an organisation is really key here, but it can be quite a tough challenge. And in the past week or so, or kind of few weeks, we've really launched the new tool for that, where we give you an estimate of a carbon footprint in about kind of 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Really quick, really accurate. And we've had about 150 people go through that process already. In terms of our online platform, which I'll go into a bit more detail soon on, we've had about 400 people over the past 2 years join up to that. So you're starting to see the scale of the problem here. And then in terms of workshops, we've trained probably about 3,000 businesses over the past 2 years directly around our workshops. On that kind of measurement carbon footprint estimator tool, we're really proud of that now, because we've had people like Scottish Edge come to us who have used it and said that it's around 80% accurate to the footprints that they've been doing manually. And we're starting to see that within 2 minutes, if we can start giving people a rough picture of their business that's never going to be 100% accurate, but it is going to be good enough to get them to take action, that's really where we're focusing on. And that's why we built Hero initially, is in giving small businesses these tools to go, well, you're saying that you want to go and take action, here's some tools to go and do it. So hands up if you like a tick list, or a list of things that you want to do and tick off. So about 30% of people here, and unfortunately you are all liars, because this is what we found from the user experience point of view, right? Is people came to us and they said, Adam, I just want a list of things to do that's going to mean that I can make progress as a small business. The reality actually was that no one used it. No one actually then went in and engaged on it. It was always the case that people would open it, they'd look at it and go, well, that's great, I'll close that again and go off and do something else. And we kind of realised we were giving people homework and we were giving them something else to do. And I know as a small business owner that we don't want more things to do, I want less. So there is this experience we went on with the kind of UX team, and what Michael really helped us out with in terms of the user experience volunteers like Tanya, Tom, Val, Samia and Ben, who helped us understand this and really explain why people weren't using Hero and came to that. And I think this is where the failure for it came in terms of numbers, of going, well, 400, it's a decent number of people, we're quite proud of that, but it's still, there's what, our target's 1 million, there's 5.5 million businesses, we are not even touching the sides on this. So the reason why we kind of realised that failed in that sense is because of the emotion. And we completely forgot the emotional aspect of this, in that from an emotional point of view, we were giving people more things to do rather than less things to do, or really focusing on how they could become a better person, a better business off the back of it. And I think this is where we need to really, so my background is also in digital marketing. And this is, oh, wait for the train. Quite a gentle train this time. So my background in marketing really helped define this, in understanding that there is no logic in buying decisions. When people are taking action, they're typically not doing it out of a logical requirement to go, well, I need to tick these things off because I understand it. They're going to act on emotion. People buy stupid shit all the time. And we forget that in sustainability. And we go, well, actually, if people are buying stupid shit all the time, that's a really powerful thing to do, because then we can get them to buy not stupid shit, and that's going to help kind of accelerate the change and take action more quickly. And I think SUVs are a great example of this, going back to the talk earlier around, well, actually, an SUV does exactly the same job that a really small car does, like a Fiat Panda or something like that. And yet people are massively buying these huge, inefficient, highly polluting, really difficult to park vehicles all the time. We've seen a massive explosion in them. The reason why is it makes people feel good, and that's the reason why we're seeing massive sales in that, and where there's kind of that marketing angle in here. So we hired Val probably about a year ago, 8 months ago? I should know that, but something around that, where we really kind of have accelerated our learning on this to go, actually, what are the emotional impacts of our products? How are we designing an experience that is talking to that in a much more effective way? And that speed has really helped us accelerate our learnings on this. In terms of what's coming next, this is where we've designed our new kind of workshop package to really try and blend all of this together, where we're calling it CRAB, or Carbon Reduction Action Box, where it is a 2-hour high-speed workshop where we give everyone everything they need to do on kind of climate within that 2 hours. And it is because we're trying to lean into that emotional side of it and go, well, actually, if we can bring people in a pub garden round a table, that's going to have them kind of respond and react to people in a more effective way, where the emotion is at the core of that, and it's being supported by technology. So we're not just giving them a to-do list, we're giving them that emotional experience and support network of becoming a better business and becoming part of their local community. And it's that human element where it's got facilitators there. I think I don't really see a place for technology only in this, in sustainability. I think we need to not forget that the humans are at the centre of this, and we're going to need to work with that in both the kind of the weaknesses of humans and the strengths of humans in that. But often I see so many climate tech startups that have got loads of funding for tech-only tools, and they always seem to fail to get traction because they forget the human element at the core of this. Which brings me on to People, Planet, Pint. And so we started this around the same time as Hero. So bearing in mind that when we started Small 99 Hero, that was about October 2021. We won Scottish Edge with that, with one of the 10 grand grants. And within that 2 years, we've got about 400 sort of users on that. People, Planet, Pint, we started at exactly the same time. We started at COP26 as a way, as Constanza mentioned earlier, for me just to go and speak to people. And we're now in around 120 cities across the world. So from Chicago to New Zealand, we had Delhi last week, and Hawaii is mentioned, and we've had around 15,000 attendees across those cities. So in terms of the speed of scale of that and the adoption of that is because it is purely human. People are coming to the pub. People like you, we've got 50 people in this room, and that's a quarter of what we've achieved within Hero within 2 years. You're all going to speak to each other later. There's probably going to be some action that comes out of this. And one really good example I heard last week was we hosted a London one. Someone from the Slovenian Chamber of Commerce was in London at the time and happened to be at a conference and came on down to it, and they bumped into someone in the toilets who they got chatting at the sink, and then was also like, oh, you're from Slovenia, what is it you do? They got chatting. It turns out that the person that they were then speaking to runs a company in Slovenia doing manufacturing, and they're now working together because they didn't realise each other existed. And that's all through them meeting at a People, Planet, Pint pub toilet in London, that action in Slovenia is now happening on climate change. That is not predictable, it's not scalable, it is not kind of investable in that sense of just going kind of graph go up, because it is chaotic and humans are chaotic, and that is why it exactly works. So I would encourage you not to to forget that action does happen at the local level. It happens in rooms like this. Don't underestimate the ability of the conversations you can have today or at the event on the 20th of June, or if you come to the Glasgow one on the 13th of June, or wherever it is, the impact, the ability of that action to actually cascade and have influence beyond what you can track and what you can understand. And don't over-focus on that tracking and that ability of it to kind of be defined and scaled, because it is often impossible. Speaking of impossible, I think I may have ended almost on time. So, yeah, well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to Michael, who's coming on next to speak a bit more, and to Alan for the tech support. And do please watch out for crab workshops in your area soon. We are going to be bringing the carbon reduction workshops to Edinburgh in the next month or so. So you'll be getting more information about that soon. But thank you very much. Over to you. Oh, yes. No, I'm going to grab a pint quickly. Sorry.
Do you want to come in? Come on in. If you're at the back, come up. There's seats here. Come on up. Come on up. Whoever wants to hear. It doesn't. He can't hear. Come on up. Yeah. Yeah, the mic. The mic. So. What's that? Oh yeah. I hope you're all writing down questions. I told everyone to be really short today, so I could be really long. My talk's gonna last about an hour, so get comfortable. I'm gonna get set up here. Is the presentation ready? You said you're doing it. No, I send it to you there. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're gonna get the presentation set up. I'm gonna set a timer so I do stay on time.
Also, I have to address it. I should have done better because, like last time, it was the same situation. The panel, the diversity in the panel. There's no women.
Four white men.
Exactly. So for next time, we need to do better.
Yeah, unfortunately, Adam's a white male, and so am I. But Adam, we should have thought about that more. Yeah, set it up here so I can. Thank you. How you all doing? You all enjoy yourselves? Yeah. Woo! This is great, isn't it? I've got quite a loud voice, so I'm hoping that you can all hear me in the background. I'm going to be looking to Barry there to make sure he can hear me. Go a bit higher. That's going to ruin the mic for Al. No, he doesn't care. He's good. I actually have to get my slides. Hang on. Yeah, I put my presentation in this nice box. All about I'm very much a digital person, but I'm very much believe that we have to undigitize a lot of the world now because we've over-digitized things and we made things more complicated. Can you see this? What do you see on the screen? Shout out. Dolphins? Just dolphins? No, this is a porpoise. Because I'm going to talk about purpose. And this whole thing was put together because I really believe in connecting the UX community with the sustainability community. I think we are common allies. If I say to every startup that I ever meet, your greatest allies are the UX community because UXers are concerned with making a difference. And we've got people here who work with purpose. So Alan, who donated his time to be here and does a lot of purpose. What I would say, there's a difference between being purpose driven and working with purpose. Alan's an example of working with purpose today. This event itself isn't something that he benefits from, but he's working to help make it facilitate it. And Constanza, Tom and Mike, they're the hosts of People Planet Pint and of UX Edinburgh, and there's a purpose in that. The purpose of that is bringing people together. So, and Brendan and Kelsey, you both work with purpose. The projects you work on are very purpose driven. Of course, Adam has devoted his startup to making a startup that is all about purpose. It's all about people taking action for sustainability, for the climate. And personally, there's a few things that have happened to me in my life that sort of made me realize, that made me want to become more of a purpose-driven person. I had incredible climate anxiety. I don't know if any of you have suffered from that. I worried that I was either complacent or potentially complicit in the climate crisis, that we are running out of time. I'm pretty skeptical if we can actually turn the clock in time. But I thought the best thing that I can do for my climate anxiety is to do projects that relate to the planet, that I would feel that, and in doing that, I definitely felt that my climate anxiety has disappeared, which is good. But also, I helped a lot of the volunteers on that project to find jobs. And when you help someone else achieve their goals, it's very rewarding. It's a very selfish thing, but you get a lot out of that. And recently, I've been helping the men's shed in Kirkcaldy with set up their printers and their IT. Not something that I particularly do for anybody, but the men's shed's run by, say, an older generation, and they were like, "Oh, do you know how to use a printer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. Yeah, okay. So I'll fix your printers for you." But again, seeing them get something out of it, but even more importantly, the men's shed is there to help provide support for people who to talk to each other, and for men to talk to each other. And some of us that are there probably didn't see it as, "Oh, I'm going to get something out of this." And particularly maybe even the chairman who came along, he probably saw this, "I'm going to help make sure this is facilitated, make sure things happen." But he actually opened up to me about a few things that were going on in his life. And that was very fulfilling for me. It gave me a great sense of contentment that he clearly had things that he wanted to get off his chest that he was able to do with me. So for me, these are my North Stars, are the planet, equality, and mental health and well-being, particularly for men. So a few years ago, I was at an event with Mike Jefferson called NUX, Northern UX, and there was a lady there spoke called Vimla Apadu, and she spoke, her talk was on "It's time to redesign design." Now, I'd highly recommend you Google that, look it up. We'll probably send links out later. It was a great talk. In fact, one of the best talks I've ever seen, ever. And I've watched a lot of TED Talks, and I've watched a lot of talks. I'm a Toastmaster, and so I really, rate a good talk against a standard talk. She was brilliant, but her topic was fantastic, and it was really, for me, a call to action for people who want to work with purpose and work in the design space to actually go, we can do something about this. Because how she finished, she says, because if we don't, who will? And for me, there's a lot of great tech people out there, but unfortunately, I think devs in particular in the tech world talk the talk of doing things, but don't always walk the walk of taking action. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. Like, a lot of you who work, almost everybody works in IT or has an IT department. For decades now, we've been saying to people, and I know we're not a great representation of that today, but that we need to get more women into tech. We need more female developers. And it hasn't happened. Why not? In my talk, I'm going to pose a lot of questions, and I'll not answer a lot of them. But the point is saying, can we trust that kind of leadership? In UX, we go research, plan, do, learn. But sometimes this learning part isn't happening. What should we learn if the tech people haven't managed to get equality of male and females in their workplace? And what should we do about that? So, I feel that they've proven that they can't make those hard decisions. They can't take that long-term view. And if they can't take that long-term view, why not? Are they impatient? And unfortunately, that impatience means that these initiatives don't blossom. And that's a problem. That's a problem, I feel. Really what we're talking about is, do we feel that they have integrity? And one of the things that I've talked a lot in the... For me, I always use this yin and yang, design and development. Really, there shouldn't be a yin and a yang. Everybody should be working together. But I feel that the designers are the people, the UX designers And sustainability people are the people who are going to make the changes that we need in the world. Tech isn't going to solve our problems. We have to de-digitize certain things. We have to use tech as a servant, not as a master. Let's see. So they often talk about maybe, and again, if these are agile people or working in UX, or a lot of people work in IT in some description, we have these two things that agile community talk a lot about the values, but they always confuse them. I've spoken to quite a few agile leaders. I say, what about the agile values? And they tell me the value statements. Value statements are not the values of agile. Why do they focus on the statements and not on the values? There's a good way to remember the values, by the way. I always do it FORC, F-O-R-C-C. So focus, openness, respect, which for me equals trust, commitment, and courage. So for me, I want people to focus more on the values and understand, what's your purpose? What are your values? What do you care about? And then are the organizations you're working for aligned with that? Left. This is a graph that I've come up with that it's very basic, but it hopefully simplifies my philosophy of what we need to do. Everything is about culture, as far as I'm concerned. And I would challenge everyone, I would say every problem in every organization ever is a culture problem, right? And I'd love anyone to challenge me on that, to say, like, give me an example and I'll explain why it's a culture problem, not a tech. Everything else in a company fits into three pillars: products and services, customer success, or communications. And I think in a lot of things we don't think enough. We think a lot about products and services, but we don't think enough about some of the other columns. And it is the job of UX people to do that as well, because if you're not communicating, even internally, how are you going to get people to buy into what you're doing? And then other people in the company will dominate and their views will get presented. So, I was just explaining again here the difference between purpose-driven or working with purpose. I want people to ask, like, while you're building products and services, some people's products might not have a purpose or not might be purpose-driven, but are you at least working or at least developing those products and services considering how you can do that with purpose? So things like accessibility, things like equality, things like sustainability. And one of the things that anybody can do, I'll wait for this train to go past. One thing that any of you can do is ask or look on your own, on the people, on your employers. Look at your employer's website or speak to people and say, where is our sustainability Do we have one? Is it? And then can you understand it? Because there's no point having a policy if you can't easily understand that. Because if you can't understand it, you can't decide, is this achievable? Is this actually realistic? Is this based in reality? Or is it just, because I've seen ones at companies, 400 pages that are meant to distract. So that's a little bit products and services. Customer success, I've put some companies here to tell some stories. I worked at Tesco Bank briefly. What I found with them was that they'd done a huge bit of ethnographic study that took over 6 months, and the company rejected it. Also, they could be a green bank, not interested. Aon, this is an example of the pension sector. Actuaries are in danger of being the most complicit people in our society when it comes to the planet. Because if we address the investment issue, if we deal with the investments, then we don't have a climate crisis. If we get the money out of oil and gas and other toxic organizations and industries, and at the minute actuaries are not really doing anything because they don't want to be the ones to wave the flag. They want to hide behind their fiduciary responsibilities. These guys are brilliant. I want to do a bit of both, I love going. I was trying to think, what do I actually consume? I buy everything from Gumtree or secondhand or from charity shops. So these guys were brilliant. These guys are terrible. These guys, I'm not sure. Some people have mixed views, right? Brilliant. Love LNER. Great service. Always good service on it. These guys got set up in Scotland really recently. And this is the thing about LinkedIn and people commenting, they put stuff out there, and I commented saying, oh, I help with the men's shed, but I don't think this Prosper has been set up to help charities and bring charities together and all this stuff. And you see the usual suspects of the Scottish tech and entrepreneur space are all behind this. And lady did respond and said, oh, yeah. I said, oh, I work with a men's shed. Like, but £500 seems like a lot of money for us to pay every year. And she says, oh, message me directly. Well, I messaged her directly. That's where it ends. Where's the integrity there? This is the GAA back in Ireland, an organisation I think has got incredible integrity. We're the biggest amateur sports organisation in the world, and I think we do a lot in our communities, and I think anyone who's from Ireland can be very proud of the GAA. And that's sort of leave it there. I had some other ones in it, but I didn't put up. Anyway, so that was about products and services. We talked about reputation, about customer success, about CX. Final thing I'm going to talk about is again, why we're here, communicating with each other. Communications is so important to achieving particularly the goals of climate action, of sustainability, but also of UXers in your own organizations, internally. Organizations like Toastmasters or anywhere where you can learn to talk or get up here and talk, so it's not just for white middle-aged guys, or sorry, Adam, you're a youngster, sorry. But communication is so important. If we're not able to communicate to the wider audience, we're not going to get people on board. So for me, I think communication is really important, internally, externally. All of you work for companies. Tell every single one of you, tell them, share this video, if for only one reason, to show them what Alan does and to show them the potential of that. Every company has the power now to be their own broadcasting company, to be their own One Show, to be their own BBC. And yet they don't take the opportunity, and it's not actually that expensive. They have huge amounts of people that hired as tech. We could actually deliver tech a lot slower if we communicated what we're doing more regularly and in a way that people can digest fully. So, in conclusion, the point of this was to ask yourself a question: what are my values? What's my purpose? And then to ask yourself, do they align with the person who's paying, who employs you, who's paying your wages? And if they don't, what do you do? How do you plan a transition from working there to here? You may need to take some education, to do some additional certification. You could do something to get experience in that, volunteer with a company, do something on your own. There's projects out there on your doorstep probably. There's lots of good community projects, a lot of good charities. You don't have to go far to find people around you that could use your help. And for me, a lot of UXers and UX thinkers and design thinkers, maybe we shouldn't be, don't be dazzled by the extra money because, or a company that's not driven with purpose or not working with purpose. Look at where you can actually work with people who, where there maybe are jobs, but they don't look like they're UX jobs. They maybe look like they're admin jobs. But if you get in, you build a relationship with the people working there, you build a relationship with the stakeholders, you have more of a chance of making a difference. There's a thing called the Scottish approach to service design. So it's worth everyone taking a look at that and say, no matter what job you're in, you can actually start applying those principles and you might get further than an external company coming in who are getting paid ridiculous money. One thing I will say again is if you talk to any tech people, they're all stressed out and they're all overworked and they don't enjoy their jobs. Yes, they're getting paid lots of money, but what's the point of getting paid lots of money if you're not enjoying life and you're not enjoying your work? So back in 1995, I felt that the internet was the next big thing that was coming. Right now,
One more minute.
right now, and this is a message I want to get out to everyone, is I think the next big thing that's coming isn't going to be tech related. It's going to be a purpose-driven economy, a purpose-driven society. We're on the verge of that. I think it's coming. Thank you.
You're all. I don't have a microphone. Sorry, Alan. You're all really warm, like it's so hot today, so please go and get a pint. You need it. Go get a pint. We'll have questions and Q&A in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so you can pass your questions. Just bring them to the front. And one more thing on the back of what Michael was talking about, the biggest change that you can do as your pension. So go right now and change and have a look at Make My Money Matter. And that's one thing you can, that's the biggest change that you can do. And it's quite an easy swap. So just do it. See you in 10 minutes.
All right. All right, so hi everyone. We're gonna crack on with the Q&As. I got quite a few from you, so I'm gonna jump straight in. So the question, probably for all of you, maybe Kelsey and Michael, a little more for you too, but you're welcome to jump in. The question is, how do you balance between maintaining high quality user experience on one hand, and on the other side, implementing sustainable practices? And I might actually add a question, does it have to be a balance, or does it actually come hand in hand? So, Kelsey, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I can quickly start off. And I'm talking from this on my experience working in the two companies I've worked for. So the Australian agency and BGSS, the company I currently work for. And for me, it was making sure to implement it at the workflow level. So similar to building any habits, I don't know if you've ever read like Atomic Habits, the book, or anything like that. If you can pair it up to something else, for me, I found that's really important. And not necessarily for just me as a developer or a designer. It was for the stakeholders, for the team around me that I had to work with. It would bring them on board and it would kind of get them on side, which really helped to bring that change systematically, I suppose, or systemically. Yeah, that's my side of it.
So, good question. I think the important thing for people to realize is sustainability isn't an overnight journey. It's something that's going to take months, if not years, and it's going to be ongoing. You know, as I say to a lot of people, carbon accounting is going to be as big as the financial accounting sector, and it's never going to go away once it's established. The best thing people could do is probably get support, and that's why the CRAB action is actually the first place. So even within project teams and that, or multiple teams within, you know, if you're wanting to take action within your team, and not all teams are going to move at the same time, but I think, you know, that's a good place to start. Is like, where are we? So establish where are you now, and what actions do you need to take, and start making a plan and review that at regular intervals. You probably have something to say on that too.
I think it is just that sustainability, I'm going to hijack the question slightly, but that's what I'm here for, is that it really does sit in every part of the organisation. And that kind of the image you showed earlier of culture being that bottom foundational pillar is the key part of it, is that sustainability is not something for the operations team, it's not for the financial team, it's not for the marketing team. It is for everybody to really look after, and it is going to be the responsibility of everybody to do small things. So yeah, I think sustainability can't be put in a box or be a tick box. As we have found.
So do you have anything? Can I ask you to use the other mic?
Yeah, I think, is this, oh, it's for there. I kind of think Michael's wrong. Sustainability isn't a journey of a day, a week, a month, a year. It's generations. If you look at the history of social change, major reorientations of societies take 1 to 2 generations, 25 to 50 years. So I've been involved in sustainability now for at least, on a academic or professional level, for at least 30 years, and virtually nothing that is being said now is new. It was all being said decades and decades ago, and we've moved forward inches, a little bit, and I think the pace of change is increasing, but one thing that I tell people is that something the head of the Samiling Buddhist monastery in the Borders once said when a reporter asked them about building their new temple. They built one side of it after years of toil, and the reporter from the Glasgow Herald said, "When is this going to be finished?" And the abbot, now dead, said, "Not in this lifetime."
Thank you. Yeah, it does sound like all of this is much more a question of psychology and organizational culture and everything like that. Sorry everyone online. I'll try to get better. So this is all more question of the psychology that Brendan was talking about, the culture that Michael was talking about. It somewhat leads to our second question, which will be probably mainly directed to Adam, but obviously you're all welcome to jump in. So this is more of a comment on what you mentioned in your speech, that tracking and monitoring emissions can itself consume so much additional energy and time and resources, and that itself can potentially then lead to higher emissions as well. So can you maybe talk a bit more about how do you strike the balance there? Like how much is too much when it comes to tracking and monitoring?
Yeah, it's a really good question because we've been involved with the Step Up to Net Zero project with Glasgow Council and Chamber of Commerce, where it was a funded position where about 30 businesses in Glasgow got a placement for 6 months, who then got training to do a lot of work, and we helped support and develop the action plans for them, which was great. But through that process, we saw that a lot of the participants started really focusing in on really minor issues and being almost paralyzed by fear of getting it wrong, to the point where they're weighing sort of grams of waste that they're throwing out to get the carbon footprint for it. And there's a point of diminishing returns, and that point is a lot higher than people realize. And so we've been doing some other work where I've been given basically half a day to get a carbon footprint for someone, for an organization. And if they answer about 5 or 6 questions, I can get that fairly quickly. You know, it's not going to be entirely accurate. There's been some stuff missed, but it gives them an idea of that footprint. And it's that context piece of going, actually, you don't need to do a footprint all at once. Just do one bit of it. Go and get your employee commuting, your business travel, and your energy data. From that, that's probably 70% of your footprint roughly done. And I think it's also important to remember that action leads to action. So the more you start doing things, the more you're going to want to start measuring it, because you'll start realizing or get curious about what the impact is. So it is really taking it and not even breaking it down into small chunks, but just going, start somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. You will correct on that journey and that course, but you do want to just start in a very small way and get going.
Anyone else wants to jump in, or shall we? I think it actually... Apologies. It actually ties in quite nicely to the next question again. So obviously, Adam mentioning that sort of, it's good to focus on things step by step rather than getting overwhelmed by everything. We're going to do a quick fire round. So all of you just give me one quick answer of, give me a specific example of how UX improvements can lead to reducing emissions. Michael, do you want to start?
Oh dear. As you put us on the spot, you see, I mean that's where I'm working with Small 99, because I think that's an example of how UX can make a difference to Adam's organisation to have a knock-on effect to others. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. I think it...
Kelsey?
I'm just sorry. Yeah, I was assuming it was going one-on-one. I think it is that. What's the impact you want to have with this? And I think carbon footprinting, linking it back to the previous question, is a good example where typically, if you get a carbon footprint report, you're going to look at it and go, "What the fuck's this mean?" And therefore, that's a user experience problem of going. Actually, if you design a carbon reduction report and footprint that is actually really talking to their problems and understand the kind of how decisions are being made in that organization and align the actions and recommendations to that user, that is going to be far more impactful than just giving them what is a technically correct but ultimately confusing report.
Referring back to what I was saying about the engineering hierarchy of safety, find out what is the worst thing and find a way of disallowing it, of obstructing it, of not making it happen. I mean, it might be, I don't know, if your company does internal travel in the UK, you can't fly. Out inside a certain set of parameters, like you're going to Cornwall, and you have to be back in 48 hours. There's no reason to fly in Britain domestically, really. Sleeper trains cheaper and nicer.
They've all answered it all pretty well so far. I'll just add on as well, it's kind of not exactly answering the question, but encouraging other champions around you as well, which is something the People Planet Pint already does. But the more people you have in your corner to fight those battles when it comes to making those arguments and discussing what these three have already summed up, the better, in my opinion. So not really an answer, but a tack-on answer, I'll say.
Appreciate it anyway. So I have one or two more questions that came from earlier. You can have a thing if there's anything else that you might want to ask. You'll have a chance afterwards as well. But so here's a question, I think, primarily for Brendan, but again, everyone can jump in. So following on your talk about dark patterns, question came in, how dark patterns can be repurposed to promote good / sustainable behavior without compromising on any ethical standards. So I think it might link to what you were talking about, the sort of consent area.
There's no simple answer to that, basically. And that's why I focused on who makes the decision as to what is allowable, because there ain't no control in this, by and large. There's no external authority telling you what you have to do and what you're not allowed to do. So it really does boil down, in a lot of instances, to individual conscience, or if your organisation is, if there's a shared and discussed understanding of these questions in your organisation, then a collective ethical decision. But there's no simple answer. It's case by case, I think. And I can't tell you because I don't know the circumstances of the decision you've got to make. And so in a way, that's I've partly qualified as a therapist. You're talking personal development, really. Your own awareness of the world and the problems and how you can deal with them, and your effect on others and so on. So that's quite a deep question in a way, and you just have to do your best. That's it.
Would anyone like to chip in? No, that's fair enough. There's one more question again on the dark patterns. I think just a general question to if you can elaborate a bit more on how can we use dark patterns into in a good way, like maybe a bit more examples of things that dark pattern has been good.
So I would say learn about them is the priority number one. Just Google dark patterns. There's tons of stuff out there. Ask any of the UX. The more experienced UX people here, when I said to Mike that I was going to tell people off in the UX group who didn't put their hand up to say they knew what dark patterns were, that they were being very naughty, he laughed. Because you need to get your head around this. You need to, and it's not, there's an overall principle, of course, but there's lots and lots of stuff about particular instances of how you can do this, how you can use clever psychological tricks, both in user interfaces and, as I said, more widely in life in general. And it bleeds into interpersonal behavior. It bleeds into setting up company policies. This isn't just about screens and programming. This is a broad principle. I'm not going to go into any individual example because I can if you want to talk to me afterwards, but you need to go into a bit of detail in each particular case and explain why. But you can do this for yourselves. I'm not the world's expert on this. I just observe and see what you can do. And I've tried to use some tricks myself.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has any questions yet?
Straight away.
Go for it. Yeah.
Who is it?
For this film.
All move forward. Oh God. No, that's true. So I'm really interested. We work for the largest environmental charity in Europe, and I think what you've all touched on today has been really interesting because you've talked about purpose, you've talked about psychological behaviour change, you've talked about measuring sustainability. Obviously, we have a website. Obviously, we reach out and stuff. But I would also say before today, we were completely unaware, and also what you've touched on has been almost entirely directed in improving businesses, which I think we absolutely all agree on. But I'd be really interested to hear on how much you've actually reached out on those environmental charities that are tackling the things that you are actually talking about, because I think that we are very purposeful in terms of what we're aiming to achieve. We are trying to affect behaviour change, but have certainly not tapped into some of the things that you've talked about. And we have really strong environmental statements that are possibly very hard to find, and I would really struggle, and one of the first things I'll do is actually go through and Google our own website to see how sustainable it is, because I would be fascinated to know, and I don't know that we've tapped into that. So yes, I would be interested to know how you've reached out to those organisations which maybe don't have the financial collateral to reach out to the best experts in some of these fields, and also how we can all do better on trying to make those connections, because UX is something I've never heard of before today. Like, we are good on our species and our ecology and our climate change information. We try and affect things from policy, from land management, and all across the board, but I would say today's speakers have all touched on things that we have absolutely not effectively tapped into, and behaviour change is absolutely fundamental to how we're going to affect this. But I am not clear on how you've done that today. Not to say you haven't, but I'm not clear on how you've done that with those organisations that you could really help to empower, and especially when you talked about the purpose and working for people that maybe don't pay that much but have a really strong purpose, because there are obviously people here today that could actually come and work for our organisation, huge benefits, but we will probably pay you peanuts to do it. And so I'd be really interested to hear your views on that and how you've done that and how you think we could be better at that as a collective. Sorry, longest question ever.
Thanks. I guess I can kick off with a sort of shorter answer, in that I think because, I mean, I'm not at the same level as most of the people in this. I'm still in a very learning journey. I've been a developer for about a year now. Before that, I was studying music teaching. So this is all relatively new to me. And for me, it's just been, for my personal projects, how I can improve those. A lot of the charities that I've found in this area, they do a lot on the ecological preservation and various different areas. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that's what this is for. But when I've looked into charities that are making a difference in the sort of tech world, and by that I mean whether it's related to websites or other areas in tech, it's a little bit sort of maybe trickier, or I haven't maybe came across them as readily as I would have liked to. One of the ones that I've been working with, which hasn't necessarily been super sustainable focused, but it's a group called the Scottish Tech Army, or Tech for Goods. And I've done a bunch of volunteering with them. And they're less on the sustainable side, more on the tech charity side of building up companies that can't really afford, or charities that can't afford a huge investment into their tech. Those charities are supported by Scottish Tech Army and Tech for Good, and a lot of volunteer developers. But even that isn't necessarily sustainability focused from my perspective, not in the ones I was involved with. So that's definitely something that could be looked at, or an opportunity for down the line. But yeah, I guess it's a little bit of a tricky one, because I would argue that a lot of charities don't have as much support in tech, never mind sustainable tech. Not to say that they should be different, they absolutely should not. But it depends on who you talk to, I suppose. It depends, is the quote.
I think just to kind of add on to this, that it's not always the case that charities are that different in terms of their decision making to businesses, which I think is often kind of, in our experience, we did a lot of work with the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations and engaging their sort of voluntary organisations, and the decisions they're making are normally based in a very similar way to what businesses are, and therefore they aren't that different, and people aren't always, well, they're not logical, as I was saying earlier. Money's not always the main thing that is motivating people or decisions. So there's two things here. One, what is motivating decisions, and therefore how do you use that as a lever to achieve with what you want? But also, money isn't always going to be the reason why people are doing stuff, especially in climate spaces. We're seeing climate anxiety go through the roof for mostly Gen Z, but also increasingly millennials, and kind of working into all parts of society in not a very healthy way. But also means that is a huge opportunity to relieve that climate anxiety through good initiatives and things like nature restoration, which are then going to lead into people being more willing to take a lower salary because they don't really care about the money. They want to actually feel like they're doing something with their life. And I think that's the real reckoning that's coming for the recruitment industry that they're not yet aware of. It is that level of just, if you're not tackling climate change, you're not tackling anything. And people are going to just start shedding jobs. There was a really interesting report from Bupa that came out probably about 2 years ago. We use quite a lot in our webinars, and that's why I mentioned earlier about retaining talent. It was a Gen Z audience mostly, but basically 2/3 of that audience were willing to take a pay cut to work in something that they deemed as kind of purposeful and sustainable, because climate anxiety was so high, and most of them wouldn't work for these organisations. And something that we've seen, not with us, but with an organisation that does a lot of carbon footprints for much bigger companies, the reason why those companies are coming to them for carbon footprint is because their graduates, who are not yet in the organisation, are asking them what their sustainability policy is. So someone who's outside of the realms of control is then asking them what they're doing, and that's causing action. So I think there is this over-focus perhaps on being environmental or sustainability needs to earn more money. It's not always the case.
Simple answer, go to one of Adam's webinars or join the CRAB training. If you can put someone through that, that will help. Longer answer, and a few people I've spoken to in the break, there is a UX Edinburgh Slack group, and I encourage everyone to join it, get in touch with me. I did run a project, a volunteer project 3 years ago now, 2021, and we had like 10 UX designers who were looking to get experience, and all of them got the experience they wanted. So if there are organizations that want help, I can try to help put you in touch or form a team. We created a self-managing team then. So that meant that the team itself were given the challenge and they decided how they address it. It meant it made it a lot easier for us as the leaders in that to support them, because it was, you know, we weren't telling them what to do. We were just helping guide them to what they wanted to do. So yeah, if that's helpful, join our Slack group and get in touch. And, you know, I'm happy to try and there's other UX leaders in the group. I'm sure they'd also be happy to be involved in things that are, you know, scratching that purpose itch that we all hopefully are. And that was the reason of doing this today, was to start getting people to have those conversations.
Yeah, I would say don't hold out for a UX expert who's also an expert in sustainability. That's why this event was held today. They are two separate skill sets, really. So I would say, and this may be an unfair characterization, but treat UX designers like lawyers, in that they're a sort of guided missile. They know how to do everything, point them at what you want done, and they'll do it. So they'll make bad things happen if you pay them enough money. But I would say clarify your own goals around, you know, your website or whatever, and find a UX designer who likes and is interested in those issues. But they won't tell you what to do. They'll do it for you.
Thank you so much, all of you. I think this is a perfect time to wrap up our Q&A. I would... Hold on.
To get sponsored by Scott Rail.
Yeah, usually, yeah. Yeah, I would obviously encourage all of our speakers and all of you guys to come together, stay around, have another few pints or even more, continue the discussions. We're going to wrap up for our audience joining from home, from our live stream. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, let's continue drinking.
Can I say one more thing? We did this event on a Saturday at 1:30 p.m., but remember that also at 1 p.m. every Saturday in Edinburgh, there's the protest against the Palestinian war. So remember to attend that, because social justice is climate justice. So if you can, go and support. Thank you.
Transport and social change. It's about the beer bike that was seized in Leith a few months ago. It's called Beer Bike Bust. Look it up on the Edinburgh Festival of Cycling. And basically we're trying to prepare Edinburgh for having lots more great big fat enormous low energy vehicles.
Nice.